Alright, so thank you for tuning in to Jump into the Bit. I'm Kyle Edwards, of course. And I must say, before I get started with this episode, that over the next few days, there are a couple of topics that I'm going to talk about that I'm very excited about. Starting with this one, there will be new topics. So, over the course of the 100 plus episodes I've done, these like 3 topics will be brand new, and they're covering subjects that I really want to talk about. And I think it'll be kind of fun for you guys as well, and I think you'll enjoy them. So hopefully you do. And then with that, if you're new here, you'll kind of get the idea of what this podcast is all about. Though it's all about me being like 100% of a fan, giving you 100% of my opinion, and no matter if it's a popular opinion or whatever, just my honest opinion. So, starting with this episode, we're going to talk about the U.S. men's national team. Now, like I said before, don't think we've actually talked about them on this podcast yet. But I do think that it is about time that, if you're not into soccer, I guess that's one thing, because if you're not into it, to try to get into it might be a little bit difficult. I don't know. But if you are somebody who's, I guess, watched U.S. soccer over the years, maybe you've gotten used to seeing a certain type of style of play with the U.S. team. Maybe you don't pay attention to them all the time because, you recognize the struggles against better teams and all that. So basically what I'm saying is that I think with this current pool of players, there's serious reason for optimism that not necessarily like a World Cup win might be in the future, but I do think that the U.S. can be more competitive on an international stage. With this group, that's all based off of them, continuing to grow together. With Greg Berhalter and I guess the powers that be of U.S. soccer being able to continue to replenish the pool of players with, fresh faces, younger talent, homegrown talent, and really build a successful homegrown system where you're constantly funneling in young talent that we can all watch grow before our eyes and really root for. Now, if you didn't see, I guess the last game against Mexico, I will say that game against Mexico where they won 2-0 was interesting in several ways. One, it represented the 3rd time that the U.S. has beaten Mexico in this calendar year, which I believe the stat was that hadn't been done in a while. So they beat them, what was it? Gold Cup final, the Nations League final, and now World Cup qualifying. So winning the Gold Cup, that's good. The U.S. has done that before, so there wasn't anything too out of the ordinary there. But for this, like I said, current pool, it was their first trophy that they got to lift, and then they backed that up with the Nations League, running through that tournament, and I think was it the Gold Cup where they had kind of like a B team. They ended up winning that Nations League. I think they had I guess they call it like a B plus squad where had some B players and then you had a couple of A players sprinkled in. They won that tournament. And now in World Cup qualifying, halfway through this stage of qualifying, they're sitting at the top of the table. Now they are tied with Mexico on points, but the U.S. is on top because of goal differential. And the goal differential is from the 2-0 win from the U.S. So by sitting on top of the table, of course, the thought is that they should qualify. Now, it's not a slam dunk, of course, because like I said, they're tied with Mexico, 14 points. You have Canada with 13 points. Canada is a good team. They're led by Tajon Buchanan, who is, star player for the New England Revolution. But he's really starting to make his name known with the Canadian team as he creates a lot of chances for them. He scores goals for them. So, he's definitely a player to be aware of. And when you play against Canada, he's a guy that you got to make sure you don't let him get loose, because he's very speedy along the flanks, and because of that speed, he gets defenses out of whack, and then Canada's able to capitalize on those and get goals. You got Panama. They are fourth with 11 points. I believe it's the top. Is the top three that automatically qualify, and then the fourth place team plays in a playoff. I believe that's how it goes. So you got Panama there. They get a little bit of a drop off with Costa Rica, Jamaica, El Salvador 6 points, and Honduras with 3. So you basically have your 4-team race: U.S., Mexico, Canada, and Panama. So I guess in the grand scheme, what we're seeing is, with the success of this group of players, it's kind of raising the level of the MLS. I mean, not all these players play in the MLS, but a lot of them do. And this is something that I guess you could see was the dream when the MLS was first established, that it was going to be a feeder system to the national team, and it has been since the inception of the MLS. It was just that getting the U.S. talent that could live up to, being competitive against European nations, South American nations, Asian nations, and even some of the African nations as well. So, with the U.S. national team success, you're seeing the prestige of the MLS internationally raise as well. Because for a while there, MLS was just let's see how I could put this, but I feel like it was kind of viewed as this little, cute upstart league that, didn't really seem like it was serving its purpose for a little bit there. It almost seemed like a detriment if U.S. teams were predominantly MLS talent. It kind of seemed like in order for the U.S. to do well, there had to be American-born players that were playing overseas somewhere. But unfortunately, in order for those players to become attractive enough to play overseas, usually they have to ball out in the MLS. Either that or, ball out nationally and then these teams see them and try to pick them up. So basically the last face of the U.S. men's national team was Landon Donovan. Landon Donovan played in MLS. I believe he went over to the English Premier League to play for a little bit, but didn't really seem to have the success over there. Basically, the most successful U.S. guy in Landon Donovan's age of U.S. soccer was Clint Dempsey, because he went overseas to England and he played for, I think he played most of his time with Tottenham, I want to say. And he more than held his own over there. He became a goal scorer. He had a few highlight plays and all that. So he was over there and he was actually standing out in the crowd. But it seemed like he was the only one. Landon Donovan was still much better as an MLS player than a European player. And then when you got that collective group together, it seemed like that U.S. team could only play one way, where you had a stellar goalkeeper in Tim Howard. If it wasn't Tim Howard, it was, I want to say it was Brad Guzan, or Guzan, how you pronounce it, was his backup. But either way, you felt comfortable with them. Defensively, it was nobody, I guess, really that stood out. It was just as a collective group, they were pretty good. Midfield, it was basically Michael Bradley, get the ball to him, and see if he could put a through ball or a ball over the top, get a guy on the run, and then look to, I guess, get it on the foot of Donovan or Dempsey, give them some space, let them try to create, and then get shots on goal. Problem with that was when they went up against the more skilled teams, that way of play just didn't work. It seemed like if it did ever work, it was like in spite of something. I know there was a few games I feel like I remember where like weather was involved that kind of leveled the playing field, or team comes in, makes one too many mistakes, and then the U.S. can get out, counterattack, that kind of style there. And it worked, because I believe that group had a couple of cycles of the World Cup where they didn't make it out of the group stage. But once they made it to, from the group stage, you knew if they went up against Portugal or Spain or Brazil or something like that, you kind of expected them to look outclassed, and they would kind of just phase out pretty early in those tournaments. That Olympic qualifying, there's no guarantee that they were going to qualify for that on a cycle-to-cycle basis. So the level of optimism back then, it was kind of tempered, because unless you're just lying to yourself, you knew the collection of talent wasn't good enough to win on a grand scheme internationally. And once again, I'm not saying it was a bad thing, because I think with that generation really opened the door for this group that we currently have. Because, like I said, Dempsey became a household name. Landon Donovan was a household name. Tim Howard was another guy who played over in the EPL, and he did well. So with their success, U.S. talent pool was seen as up and coming. say all that to say, fast forward to today, and this group, they play a different style. They play more of a, I would say maybe like opportunistic, because they have guys who can take on defenders one-on-one, make a play around them, and really get into some dangerous areas on the field. They have guys who are great in the air, so you whip it into the box. You have a few guys who can do some damage if they get their head onto the ball. You also have a good mix of, I guess we'll say veterans. It doesn't seem like they have anybody that's like too old, but they have some guys who've been around the block a little bit. And I also think with that last group, there were certain players that were built up to be good that just never really panned out. And the biggest one that comes to mind is Josie Altidore. When Altidore did play, you saw the talent that he had. Now, his style of play wasn't exactly the most exciting to watch, because he was he was basically a forward that you'd give it up to, and he would hold his position, hold the ball, and allow others to get into the offensive attack. He could score goals. He would from time to time. But I think the biggest issue with him was he seemed to always be dealing with something. Some type of injury or just whatever reason. He wasn't always on the field. And you could easily see that a lot of national team fans were growing tired of it. So, like I said, he had a stagnant style of play. He had coaches that seemed to be married to a lineup or two, and that's what they went with. But now, with today, and Greg Berhalter, it seems like he's created a, well, not just him, but, him and the association, I guess we'll call it, have created a pool of players where it seems like there's lots of competition. There are I'm trying to see what else I'm trying to say here, but youth movement, yes. So a lot of competition, and it seems like Berhalter is more willing to give these young players a shot at trying to make a name for themselves. One thing I really couldn't understand with, past, I guess, managers or coaches, you'd call them, whether it was Bob Bradley or Bruce Arena, Jurgen Klinsmann. Although Klinsmann I will give credit to, because he really started the whole American born overseas, convinced them to come over here, play for the national team and all that. So you started seeing a influx of European style of play or whatever in the U.S. game. But then, he overstayed his welcome, and the Soccer Federation, got rid of him, went to Bruce Arena, who at the time seemed like the right guy to get. With Bruce Arena, it seemed like he was more towards the side of the veterans on the team. And you're constantly seeing lineups out there with Altidore if healthy. If not, usually a Zardis or something up top. Then you would see Dempsey, I think Beasley was still on the team then. Bradley, Beckerman, guys like that. Defensively, I honestly can't remember any of the defensemen. I guess like John Brooks, stuff like that. And like I said, it was fine because off of the back of Klinsmann kind of flaming out, Bruce Arena did bring some stability and seemed like they were on the upward trend, I'll say. But then after a while, Bruce Arena kind of flamed out, and it just seemed like the U.S. was stuck middling around in the average space internationally. So, then they went looking for a new coach. Beerhalter emerged, and he had some struggles early on. But like I said, from the end of Klinsmann's reign to now, I really feel like there's reasons to be optimistic. So looking at face of U.S. soccer then, Landon Donovan, now it's easily Christian Pulisic. And just looking at the two of them, I think Pulisic is more talented than Donovan. Once again, not saying Donovan wasn't a good player, but I think Pulisic can do more than Donovan can. Now, whether or not he has the career that Donovan had, that's up to him. And, how healthy he stays, all that. As well as the other players around him being able to play off of him. And, like I said, it's not just Pulisic, because you have Weston McKinney, who was a guy that I really like watching play. Because he has a little bit of an edge to him, and I like that. But he's very skilled, he's quick, and he just seems to have a nose for the ball when it's in the air or in the box. So he's definitely a welcome sight of the team. You have a guy like DeAndre Yedlin, who, like Pulisic, is a guy who played over in Europe. He was with Newcastle, I believe. Pulisic was Chelsea. Even in goal, you have Zach Steffen, but you have a very capable number 2 in Matt Turner. And we even saw that with the qualifying, because there was a stretch of games where Steffen wasn't available, and they went with Matt Turner. Matt Turner played really well. Now that Steffen is back, it seems like he's raised his game as well. Because I'm sure he noticed what Matt Turner was doing. And therein lies that competition I'm talking about, where it's starting to raise the game of some of these players. You have like a Kellen Acosta, who's been around for a little bit now, but he's still pretty young, I believe. And he's a guy who plays a set role. He's kind of this version's Michael Bradley, as a guy who's dependent on to work the midfield, get your through ball over the top, get it into a position where either Pulisic can get it onto his foot and make a play, or onto somebody else who can get into the box for Pulisic to go ahead and make a play. Then with that, you have younger guys like Timothy Way, was it Gio Reyna, who's come on, shown really well. So when they start getting a little bit better and are more ready for a regular role with the team, you have confidence there as well. And like after the Mexico game, I was on Twitter talking to a few people, And there was an interesting question that was raised by somebody where they were just like, what did they say? Well, so they're talking about how the team looks really good. The Dos a 0 score that we've come to know and love in these U.S.-Mexico games. Got that. And just the way the team did it, it was, they were fighting hard all first half. Beerhalter makes the switch, brings in Pulisic. Pulisic pays dividends, scores a goal. McKinney was always in the game. He didn't come out because McKinney scored the second goal. And he scored it. Basically, as I said, he was hanging around the box. The ball squirted loose, came onto his foot, made a play, got the goal. So with this group, you're starting to see confidence building. And more evident than ever was the gesture from Pulisic after his goal where he raised up his shirt, had his undershirt on with Man in the Mirror, which was a shot at who was it? Ochoa, the Mexican goalkeeper, because he came out and said that something like the U.S., when they look in the mirror, they want to see Mexico or something like that. Basically saying that the U.S. envious of Mexico's success. That's me paraphrasing. So the fact that Pulisic scored the goal, showed that on his shirt, showed like a real sense of this U.S. team letting Mexico know that they're going to be around for a while. And, this calendar year, beating them 3 times, expect more competitive games now. And the U.S. really feels comfortable now at this point that they, when going up against Mexico, can find a way to get it done. Because I did tweet out during the game that it was like around the 75th minute or something. The game was, getting close to the end, and it seemed like Mexico was starting to get real chippy. So I was saying that, Mexico is looking like a team that realizes that their stranglehold on CONCACAF is kind of slipping, and the U.S. has made it known that they're here to stay, to challenge for the top team in CONCACAF. And those of you who don't know, say CONCACAF. CONCACAF is you can basically say like the division that the U.S. is in internationally. Trying to think what it stands for. But basically, it's your North American teams, so Canada, Mexico, U.S., your Central American teams, your Honduras, Costa Rica, Panama, stuff like that, and your Caribbean nations, so Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Haiti, Trinidad, those countries. That makes up CONCACAF. So if you hear me say CONCACAF, that's what I'm referring to. So for the most part, it was Mexico's group to win. And then after that, it was kind of an influx of other teams, whether it was Jamaica for a little bit there, or Panama, or Canada now, or Costa Rica. Somewhere after Mexico, all those teams would fill in along with the U.S. But now, like I said, just from this year, beating Mexico 3 times is crazy. I know I haven't seen it since I've been paying attention. Like I said, they gave the stat it happened a while ago. But it's not just the U.S. as well, because as I said before, Canada is up and coming with Buchanan as well. And I think for the next few cycles, it's going to be probably those 3 teams fighting each time. And I think that's good for CONCACAF, number one. I think it's good for international soccer. That there's like real competition over here. And I also think it's good for, I guess, the talks, because there was some talk about, what is it? Like a joint league between MLS and Liga MX, which is the Mexican soccer league. And even some talk of a Nations League type with CONCACAF and the South American group, which I'm trying to think. What is it? Is it like CONMEBOL? Something like that. But now you're starting to see that other nations are willing to get into these partnerships with CONCACAF, which is something that wouldn't have happened some time ago, because nobody really took the MLS seriously, or CONCACAF seriously for that matter. Because around the world it was like a foregone conclusion that Mexico was going to win it, so what was the point? But as the competition levels raised here, it makes it look better around the world. And I think it allows the U.S. to get better games for friendlies and all that kind of stuff, which then exposes this young talent to a higher quality of football, which then raises their game. So so that person on Twitter that was talking back and forth basically saying that, could it be that he's witnessing like a really good U.S. squad? To which I said, I think there's definitely like a development going on here that makes you optimistic that the U.S. can be a major player internationally. We saw in the rankings a couple months ago they were top 10 in the world. They then fell back a little bit to like 13. But I fully expect them to move back up, especially after this third win against Mexico, because Mexico was the highest ranked CONCACAF team at number 9. So I wouldn't be surprised we see when the next rankings come out in the end of November, I think. Maybe probably the end of November. Would not be surprised to see U.S. now being the highest ranked CONCACAF squad. Now, of course, they can't get too far ahead of themselves because, like I said, World Cup qualifying is only halfway done. And their next game is against, I believe it's Jamaica. Now, Jamaica seems to be having a down cycle right now in World Cup qualifying, because I fully expected Jamaica to be up in the top 4. And they could still get there because they're only 5 points behind Panama, but they seemed to start off slow this first half of qualifying. So they're going to have some work to do, but they're definitely a squad that can, make some noise in this qualification group. So it's definitely not a game that the U.S. can go into lightly. Otherwise, they will get upset by Jamaica. So I guess my final thought on U.S. would be, there is reason for optimism. If maybe you're a fan who, got turned off or something, there is a reason to watch this team now. They are exciting to watch. They play with, you can tell it's a team that has more speed than U.S. squads of the past. would say they're probably a little more athletic than squads of the past. And with that, they play a more exciting brand, the game. And I think it's fun to watch. I mean, watching that game against Mexico, it was great to see Pulisic come onto the field and then right away pay dividends, get the goal on the, I wasn't say glancing header, but I mean, it was swung into the box. He made kind of a late run to the ball, and because of that, he was able to get in front of the Mexican defender and get his head onto it and score the goal. And then even the most craziest thing to me was that there were actually questions about Beerhalter coming into this game. It seemed like to me, even though he had already, led the U.S. to wins over Mexico twice before. And I've always thought that, you play well against Mexico, it's a reason for you to kind of silence the critics. But now beating them 3 times, I'm assuming that talk or the little whispers of Beerhalter maybe being in trouble, I'm hoping are over. But of course, that's going to be predicated upon them finishing the job and qualifying and getting to the World Cup. Now you're probably wondering what's so significant about qualifying the top of the CONCACAF table is that by finishing first and winning the group means that you go into I think it's like pot 1 for the World Cup group configuration. And then all that basically means is that those teams in pot 1 will make up the teams for all, I think it's 8 groups. So that would mean that the U.S. would be the highest ranked team in their group, which would then mean that they'll have a better chance of making it to the knockout stage. And once again, not saying with this group that, they'd have to qualify for the World Cup and make like a deep run for it to be a success. But I do think coming out of the group stage at this point with this group, especially if they win the CONCACAF group, is something to be expected. So, over the next coming months, it's going to be interesting to see how this team does. See if maybe Beerhalter settles in onto a certain lineup that we can kind of see, grow together. Because right now, Beerhalter still does a little bit of juggling with the lineups, and I think that's fine. Because, like I said, there's a lot of young players that you want to give the opportunity to. But it's ultimately a good problem to have. So, like I said, I was very excited for what I saw against Mexico. Will be even more excited if they could then turn that into another strong performance against a Jamaican squad. And hopefully they'll be able to take a hold over this group, win the group, and then get to World Cup seeding and all that. Well, get into the pot 1 of seeding. I think that was a good introduction to U.S. men's national team talk. Definitely we'll be talking about them again because, like I said, with Jamaica coming up soon. Let's see, who are their next few matches against? I want to say it's like Jamaica. I feel like they got Panama coming up after. I think so. But either way, I'm fully expecting them to win the group. So whoever they have on the schedule is who they have. But I think at this point, I mean a second game against Mexico against this coming up. some point. But yeah, like what I see, like what Beerhalter's done. I'm not one of those who thinks, his job was on the line or anything like that. I think he's done a fine job. And like the influx of young talent, like the youth movement that's going on, because a lot of the members of the youth movement bring an aspect to the team that's, is needed. So I think the future is definitely bright for U.S. soccer. And as the popularity of soccer, grows in the country, I think it's just going to continue to raise the level of the homegrown talent. So who knows? Maybe a World Cup title is in the cards for the U.S. in the near future. We'll just have to see how it all plays out. But like I said, that's I guess those are my thoughts on U.S. soccer. You definitely let me know if you agree with me or not. You can do that several ways, Like I said, follow me on Twitter at Chompin' Podcast. If you do that, interact there. Let me know. Because I did send out a tweet after the game showing the U.S. at the top of the table. So, if you were to follow and you saw that tweet, reply to it, we can get a conversation going there. There's also the Facebook page that you can interact as well. Let me know what you think. All you do is search Chomping at the Bit, like the page, and then boom, you're in. Or depending on what platform you're listening, if you have a review section or something like that, or if you're on YouTube, comments, you can leave it there as well. So several ways to get a hold of me. I would really, hope you try to take advantage of it. But yeah, I think it's a good spot to end this episode. So thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, go back and check some other episodes, at least in the meantime, before I drop a new one. And like I said, if you like, subscribe, all that, wherever you're listening, you will be notified when I do drop a new episode. So, yeah. I mean, if you listened to the episode before, I kind of told you what the other episodes I was going to do for this week. So you could probably guess which ones I was, most excited for, but can't. I think next episode will be, so what I'm going to do is basically a 2-part thing about narratives that need to stop. I'm going to start with, I think, NBA narratives, and then the second will be NFL narratives that need to stop. And with that, I mean, like you turn on a sports debate show, kind of these ways of, thinking that, a lot of these analysts are putting out there that I feel like I don't agree with. I'm going to talk about some of that. I'm trying to think of an example I could give you. So I guess NBA wise, a narrative that is out there is the whole LeBron Jordan debate. I will talk about that one. I can guarantee you I will give you my opinion on that. And then for like an NFL narrative, it would be maybe Manning versus Brady or something like that. So, but yeah, I'm going to have a lot of fun doing those. And you'll see why. And we'll talk more about that on those episodes. But thanks again for tuning in. Be safe out there. God bless. Have a good one. And I'll catch you in the next episode. All right. I'm out.